mechanism, mechanism, mechanism. Hello. Let's talk about the word mechanism. So, as part of speech, mechanism is a noun. In common usage, it refers to a system or process that produces a specific result, often in a technical or scientific context. For example, you might hear someone say, "The lock on my door has a faulty mechanism," meaning the way the lock works is not functioning properly. You can also use mechanism to describe a plan or strategy for achieving something. Like, we need to identify the mechanisms that will help us meet our sales targets this quarter. One special note about its usage is that mechanism often implies a level of complexity or intricacy, so you might not use it to describe simple processes or everyday activities. In a meeting with investors, the CEO discussed the new funding mechanism that would allow their company to scale up operations more efficiently, citing its ability to provide necessary capital without compromising control. Later that evening at a casual dinner party, when asked about his weekend, a friend mentioned that he had finally figured out the mechanism behind his bike's tricky gear system and was now able to ride with ease. Meanwhile, in a graduate-level engineering course, a professor used the term mechanism to describe the complex interplay of gears and levers within a mechanical device, requiring students to analyze its kinematics and dynamics to fully comprehend its functionality. So you want to know about this concept that helps things work together smoothly? Okay, let me explain. A mechanism is basically a system of parts that work together to make something happen or get something done. It's like a set of gears and levers that fit together in a specific way to achieve a particular goal. In everyday life, you might see mechanisms in things like door locks, gearboxes, or even your phone's touchscreen. They all use a combination of parts to make something work properly. Other concepts that are similar to this idea include process, system, and procedure. They're all about how things get done. But the key difference with a mechanism is that it involves a specific set of physical parts or steps that are designed to work together in a particular way. Obvious, obvious, obvious. So, let's talk about the word obvious. As a teacher, I can tell you that it's an adjective, which means it describes a noun or pronoun in more detail. In common usage, people use obvious to describe something that is clearly true or easily noticeable. Like when someone says, "It's obvious that he's tired," you don't need any special explanation, because everyone can see that. You'll also hear people say, "Obvious choice," which means the most logical or sensible option. What I want to note about its usage is that sometimes people use obvious a bit loosely, like when they're trying to sound smart, but really it's just a way of saying something is easy to understand. So, as language learners, remember that using obvious means you think the truth or solution is clear and not complicated. Don't be afraid to use it in sentences, but also make sure you're not overstating things. Here are 3 examples of how to use the word obvious in different contexts. In a formal setting, such as a lecture on critical thinking, you might say, "It is obvious that our current understanding of human cognition has several limitations when it comes to predicting individual behavior." This sentence uses the word obvious to assert a point with confidence and authority. In casual conversation, for example while discussing a TV show or movie, you might say, "It's so obvious that the main character is hiding something from his friends. I mean, come on. The clues are right in front of us." This sentence uses the word obvious to emphasize a point that seems clear to the speaker, but might not be immediately apparent to others. In a business or academic context, such as in a meeting discussing marketing strategies, you might say, "The results of our market research are obvious. People are clearly looking for more sustainable and eco-friendly products. We need to adjust our sales pitch accordingly." This sentence uses the word obvious to state something that is clear from the data, making it clear what steps should be taken next. So, you know how sometimes things are clearly true and can't be denied. Like when someone says something is green and you look at it and see that it's indeed green. That's basically what obvious means. It describes a situation where something is plain to see or understand, and there's no need for further explanation because it's just so clear. It's like the truth of something has been laid out in front of you, and you can't help but see it. In everyday conversation, people might say, "It was obvious that she wasn't happy," or "The answer was obvious once we looked at the numbers." The main idea is that obvious points to a situation where something is just too clear to miss or debate. Occupy. 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 Let's talk about the word occupy. As a verb, it has several meanings, but in general, it means to be present in a place or position, often in a way that is physical or visual. In common usage, people might say things like, "The protesters occupied the city square," to mean that they were physically present and taking up space. Another example is, "Her thoughts are occupied with her upcoming exam," which means that her mind is focused on something else. It's worth noting that when used in the context of protests or demonstrations, the word occupy can take on a connotation of challenging authority or traditional norms. So it's always good to be aware of the tone and audience when using this word in conversation. So, you want to learn how to use the verb occupy in different contexts? Well, let me give you 3 practical examples. In formal writing, such as academic papers or official reports, you might say something like, "The city's main square has been occupied by protesters for several days, demanding changes to the current government." This shows how occupy can be used to describe a group of people taking over a physical space. On the other hand, in casual conversation with friends or family, you could say something like, "I'm going to occupy my couch tonight and binge watch my favorite show, don't bother me." Here, occupy is used more playfully to indicate that someone will be spending time doing something specific in a particular place. And finally, in business settings, such as meetings or emails, you might say, "The new company will occupy the top floor of the office building, providing separate space for our marketing and sales teams." In this case, occupy is used to describe taking over a physical space that's specifically designated for a particular purpose. So, you want to know about this concept where people stay in a public space for an extended period of time, often without permission from the authorities? It's kind of like when a group of people settle in a spot, like a park or a plaza, and refuse to leave until they get their demands met. Mainly, it involves people being present and staying put in a specific location, which can be a challenge for the authorities who want them to move along. This concept has similarities with terms like protest or sit-in, where people use nonviolent resistance to express their opinions or bring attention to an issue. It's often used as a way to show solidarity and call for change. Whether it's related to politics, social justice, or the environment. Does that make sense?